Hiya! Welcome to this, my 94th episode and 7th solid year crafting VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled Into Every Generation, I'm joined by friend and friend of the pod, Marc Bailey, also known as Grailwolf. We chat about the 1992 release, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, plus comments on Rescue Me, Wheel of Fortune, Doctor Who, and so much more. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have it on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
Quick heads up, if you get a chance to check out sister production, VideoFuzzy, the soundtrack, episode 11, Relics of Things Past, features an interview I recorded with a musician friend of mine from college, Mark Leonard Mason. Shortly before posting the episode, I learned he died in a car accident. I feel the passion, intelligence, humor, and love he had for his art and his fellow artists shines through this conversation, and encourage you to check it out if you get a chance. That's VideoFuzzy, the soundtrack, episode 11, Relics of Things Past. As for this entry, well...
And now, VideoFuzzy presents Fuzzy Feature.
Initially, this episode I was going to barely bother with my catalog. I'd focus on Pat Sajak's retirement for 40-odd years, hosting Wheel of Fortune, slap something together for this, yay, 7th anniversary episode, woohoo! And that'll be part of it, for sure. But from Disc 1601, I was encountering excellent programs, including a documentary and 40-year retrospective on the Broadway production of Hair, and then, Jesus Christ, Clerks? My title tagline would have been, I'm not even supposed to be here today! I found a sci-fi miniseries reimagination of Alice in Wonderland called Alice, a very significant episode of Rescue Me, my God, and pilot episode of Criminal Minds. I mean, this was going to be a significant episode no matter what I did. And then on disc 1604, I got this sea of blue and yellow pom-poms framing exuberant yellow sweaters, dancing till you can't dance no more, centered below the show title, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
How funky is your chicken? How funky is your chicken? How loose is your goose? Our goose is totally loose. So come on, all you hot fans. So come on, all you hot fans. And shake your caboose. And shake your caboose.
It's 1992. It's malls. It's cheerleaders. It's California. And a blonde cheerleader named Buffy Summers wants nothing more than to shop and dance and play with her friends, mostly to shake off these visions and nightmares she's been having of darkness, devastation, and destruction. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a legit time capsule. I had graduated high school in 1988, so time period for high school in the early 90s looked very familiar, not to mention attitudes and, just how people talk to one another. I loved the analogs between Buffy's friend group and Quinn Morgendorffer's fashion club in Daria. Buffy's friend Sandy rejecting a yellow leather jacket Buffy loved shop windows so 5 minutes ago, and then later turning up in it. When Buffy calls her out on it, she says, "What? It's retro." It's easy to see scribe Joss Whedon's influence throughout this thing. Apart from the fight scenes, which are always cool, the friend dynamics are detailed and insightful for the smallish amount of time devoted to them. Also, the various reactions of Buffy herself, like when Rest His Soul Donald Sutherland shows up as Merrick, her watcher, and she's like, whatevs, homeless. Or Lothus, the foretold, casting a thrall over her at a high school dance, and she breaks it. He's awkwardly trying to recast it without his violin. That was just comically awkward. Like in the series when Xander's got a cross that doesn't seem to be warding off evil so effectively, and he shakes it. The comic beats land well. Merrick comes after her after cheerleading practice, confronts her about her power, and says she goes training with him, and she's unconvinced. I've been chosen to go to the graveyard. Why don't you just take the first runner-up? He is able to draw connections for her with the dreams and visions she's been having. I mean, good thing, too, it had been a short film. We did have some weird energy with friends and school acquaintances becoming aware of vampire activity through various means, encountering them or becoming them. David Arquette as a vampire is one of the best performances I've ever seen from him, honestly. I'm not sure it is entirely his hovering effect, and Paul Rubens as a vampire is hilarious. His death scene is not to be missed. It extends into the credits. honestly might still be going on in some capacity somewhere. And along with vampires, demons, and the forces of darkness, Buffy faces some social awkwardness when her duties as Slayer interfere with her dance theme planning duties, her hanging out at the mall duties, her obligations as a cheerleader for the Henry High Hogs. When one of the basketball players becomes a vampire, she's got to run out from the sidelines to confront him, which is so embarrassing, to say nothing of the spectacle she makes at the Hug the World dance. Her friends can't even. She is getting some help from Luke Perry as Pike, boy who likes her, which is nice. And plus, she's a hot chick with superpowers, which takes the edge off. The lines between horror, comic horror, and straight-up horror spoof, blur, and fuzz at times, but as the show developed, Buffy won the day by having solid objectives. I wanted to say stakes, but I mean, yeah. The pretty blonde teenager saving the day over and over again made for a compelling character, and there's a direct through line between Christy Swanson's and then Sarah Michelle Gellar's Buffy, and then Hayden Panettiere's cheerleader character in Heroes, a young woman discovering extraordinary powers, taking on extraordinary tasks. In the interviews since the movie spawned the intricately written and sprawling emotional and supernatural world of the television production and its eventual spinoff, Angel, writer and show creator Joss Whedon indicated he wanted to set the damsel in distress trope on its ear. The bubbly Cali girl cheerleader, always the victim, in this case, is the Slayer. Into every generation is born a chosen one. She alone fights the vampires, demons, and forces of darkness. And in this case, shops, and dates, and accessorizes, and planned school dances. Couple things with this one. I wanted to mark 7 years putting this little podcast together with something special, and one very special mark I can point to is longtime friend and friend of the pod, Marc Bailey, also known as Grailwolf. Figured I'd celebrate the funkiness of this chicken properly. Mark?
Anytime I can be mentioned in the same breath as a funky chicken is a good day. So,
And then congratulations. How funky were those chickens?
Oh, so funky. Oh, so funky.
My goose is totally loose, so... What I loved about that scene is that when they recreated it, I think actually in episode 3, The Witch, with the cheer team, then I think they used the same routine. So it was very cool. But yeah, since we were talking about the movie version, which happened at least 5 years before Buffy, I think it was in 92, and then Buffy series premiered in 1997. So there was there were some changes, but yeah, having just watched the movie, I guess I'll start out. What did you think?
It was interesting. I had kind of forgotten two things about this film. One was how good the film actually is, and also how bad the film actually is. I remember I saw this in the theaters when it first came out.
Oh, cool.
And, yes, I'm dating myself, but, you know.
I was at that time, too, so.
I remember coming out of the theater and thinking, you know, okay, that was a cheap movie. It wasn't well made, but it was fun. That was a lot of fun. I really had a good time with that. Mm-hmm. And that I think holds true today. One of the things about it is that it had a big advantage over most of the silly summer comedies that have been a staple forever, as far as I can remember. And that is the fact that it had a script written by Joss Whedon. Mm-hmm. And so even though it was dumbed down, you had the now late lamented Donald Sutherland rewriting scenes on the fly as he performed them. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of other problems, and it had a budget that seems to have been almost non-existent. Yeah. Despite all that, there was something there. There was something to the script. First of all, the fact that there were so many quotable lines.
Excuse me for not knowing about El Salvador, like I'm ever going to Spain anyway. Wow, look at the jacket. Please, it's so 5 minutes ago. I thought that look was over. Well, it's retro.
My name is Merrick, and you have been chosen, Buffy.
Chosen to go to the graveyard? Why don't you just take the first runner-up, okay?
You must never forget the cardinal rule, Buffy. vampire is a lot easier to kill than Kent.
Does the word duh mean anything to you?
Who in my new jacket? Kill him a lot.
Lighten up, Merrick.
None of the other girls ever gave me this much trouble.
And where are they now? Hello. Guys, I think reality stepped out of here about 5 minutes ago.
Hi. How's it going?
I'm fine. You're obviously having a bad hair day.
Funny. Admit it, Buffy. Aren't there times when you just feel less than fresh? You and I are one.
One what? Cute couple? I don't think so.
Look at me. You and I are joined.
We joined? Please.
I am life beyond death. And you are just like the other girls.
Maybe I'll surprise you.
This is your defense. Your puny faith?
No. My keen fashion sense.
Yeah, there was so much. And some interesting casting. Paul Rubens he would not have been my first choice in casting for a scary vampire, but he pulled it off.
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about the context of the time, because we were getting, if you start out with the Jason movies, and then you get the Freddy movies, and Freddy, as the franchise progressed, got, way more comic. So, the comic beats were, a little, more present in your horror. And then you get into this, and it's not really the vampires. I mean, you're focusing on the Slayer, so the focus shifted a little bit, but yeah, they weren't afraid to be funny, because, you've got a snarky teen, and usually she's she's gonna be the victim, but she's the one who actually, saves the day, so,
I adored the fact, even then, that Pike was the damsel in distress. That was wonderful. I really, really liked that.
It was good script flipping, absolutely.
Yes. A lot of, it's what Joss has been known for a long time, and that subverting of expectations. You'll notice the fact, and this has been true in a lot of teen movies, but generally all of the guys that treated women poorly, that didn't respect their agency, that were jerks.
Mm-hmm.
These were not the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that. It would have been very easy to redeem them by the end of the movie or something like that. And they did not. No, they were just jerks.
Yeah.
But from the beginning, well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When Pike first met the popular crowd, he is definitely disparaging towards them. Says some cruel things, but none of them are misogynist.
Yeah.
The things he says are just about them being awful,
And the big bad is somebody who's talking in the theater. I mean, and we know their fate. We know the fate of people who talk in theater.
Very
so
special hell.
Yes.
Very special hell.
Mm-hmm.
But then as Pike gets to know, becomes more and more part of the plot, I was looking for this, and I don't remember any misogyny from him. And in fact, for the time, remarkably progressive.
Mm-hmm.
He asks for consent repeatedly, before he does almost anything. He treats her with respect, and he has no problem with her being the one that kicks ass. You're the chosen guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I thought, I can't think of it. I mean, as you're bringing it up, I feel like his character was written as this is how you human.
Yeah, it's now the norm, or is projected that way in a lot of media. But back in the 90s, that was very unusual, very uncommon for a leading man.
It was well written, I felt, and we're talking about all this, and Buffy's standing there waiting for us to get to her.
Well, I think Christy Swanson did a good job with what she had.
Mm-hmm.
When the tone allowed for a little more seriousness, you could really see some good acting chops there.
Yeah.
There were some times when I think the way it would have really helped to have Joss there probably directing, because there were a few times when she and some of the other people in the cast would deliver clearly a Joss line, not perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, you can see they didn't quite grok the way that he was intending it to be said. And it would, but that's fine. You know, that's a minor point. And for the most part, I think she did an excellent job with the action side of things. But in a lot of the fight scenes and the training montage and stuff like that, she came across as a little less capable than I think the character should have been at that point.
Oh.
And I think I even, to the point where I went back and looked, you know, who did the stunt choreography? Who did the stuff? And I can't fault those people. They've been involved, all the guy who did the martial arts instruction, I mean, he got his start as one of the stunt people on Enter the Dragon, you know. I mean, he knows his stuff. He's been in a lot of things. And done stunt coordinating for a lot of things. The stunt coordinator had also done a lot of things that I think came out really well. So I think we can blame the director on that.
I think that's fair.
I think it was a matter of poorly chosen angles, maybe not enough takes, you know, things like
and
that.
Also, if the idea is you have a film, I mean, I am looking at this, the parallels between what happens in the movie and what happens in season 1 of Buffy are very, there's just analogs all over the place. You have the big bad, he's being resurrected because there's a new, and, they're going to, confront the Slayer directly, and they're going to put her in the thrall, and they're going, and there's no reason to spoil season 1 for people who haven't seen it. But, I mean, I can't imagine anybody's listening to me for 7 years and not already watched all of Buffy. But, you know, I guess there's probably one. But, I mean, it feels like, Lothus as the big bad for this, and he has his minion vampires, so, they have to be, they have to either be incompetent or ridiculous, so there was a range. And it's a movie, you don't even have 2 hours with these people, so you really have to, get her from bubbly blonde, the only real connection she's got with all of this, mythos is that she has bad dreams. And that's how Merrick gets in and says, hey, no, I can actually, tell you, give you what's going on with that. I also loved, hey, your mark, it's up. Oh, I had that removed. That was so gross. But she was such a California teen, and it was like, yeah, I'm not gonna have this hairy wart on me. Yeah.
Well, I think, in terms of her acting chops, I really did, I totally bought her transition from, you know, bubbly, airheaded teen to more serious Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it wasn't overdone, and it was gradual enough, and you could, a lot of it was accomplished by just seeing her reactions to what her friends were saying.
Yeah.
Rather than her just saying, I'm feeling more mature now. You know, you watch her
yeah.
in the middle of these conversations, just starting to get this, what the hell look on her face,
yeah.
You know? Yeah, I think they did a really good job with that, and she did a really good job with that.
And the friends' reactions to becoming vampires and encountering vampires, it okay, you know, I'm living my life in LA and this is not usual. But it's like they reacted to them like more of an ew kind of, rather than scary and I enjoyed that even when the dance is entirely disrupted, Buffy is still facing social pressures like, ew, how uncool to show up without a date. It's like, this is so much more than us showing up without a date, and people are going to oh, look, that wall has come down. Didn't she destroy a gymnasium?
In the original script, she burned the gymnasium down. The gymnasium is where they were holding the dance.
Mm-hmm.
And she burned the building down to kill off most of the vampires.
Which it would.
Yes, and
rather indiscriminately.
Yeah. And I don't know how much of the change was due to wanting to retain a more comedic tone, and how much was due to the fact that fire's expensive. But either way, they decided not to go with that. But in the original script, that was what it was. And anytime this period of her life was mentioned in the TV series, they brought up that she had burned down the gym.
Which, something could have happened off camera when she was going 2 years back in time and becoming a sophomore.
Yeah, that's the other thing. She's clearly a senior in this.
So,
and having sex at least once.
At least,
they did actually. There has been at least one official release of the story from the original script, and that was in the comics, in the Dark Horse comics. They did. I think it was just a 2-issue thing, just called The Origin, where they retold that whole story per the original script, and that was nice to have. It's obviously was published long ago now, but I think you can still find reprints. A couple, they've been printed like 4 different times in different collections and stuff. But that can still be found, and probably as close as we're going to get to a canon retelling of that story. I remember that the comic books that were canon didn't start until after the series wrapped, so with the season 7.
And you've been following since then. I was going to ask if we had her go undercover as an ad executive or solving mysteries with a talking dog at any point in the... No? No. Actually, weirdly enough... Oh, wait?
Oddly enough, it actually got pretty big. The story got much bigger, and which makes sense. These are all the ideas that he would have wanted to incorporate in the next few seasons, if he had unlimited budget. So it had it gone to additional TV seasons, I can't say it would have worked out the same way. Probably they would have had to change a lot of things due to censors and budget and all sorts of things. But it is actually a pretty good story.
Cool. And that's been going on since. When did the last one come out? Are they still?
Don't know for sure. I did kind of stop following it after a while, but I'm planning on trying to pick up as many of the back issues as I can and catch up on the story. I don't think it's still going on, but I'd have to check. They changed comic companies, producers, and they changed the approach as well. The new company, I want to say it's Boom Studios, but don't quote me on that. The new company is doing a series, sort of reimagining. It's Buffy if Buffy had started today. So it's a more updated, they have cell phones, things like that.
I've heard of this, but I hadn't heard it happening, and I guess I'm going to defer to you. What have you heard?
I think I read a couple issues. I'm not a big fan personally, but not because of the quality. I think it's fine. It's just I don't. It is a total retelling, so they are actually changing story elements.
Is Joss involved with it still?
I don't know. I think he has said, like obviously he's allowed them to keep the license. Yeah. So he is at least tacitly approving of what they're doing, but he certainly hasn't said anything about it being canon or anything like that. So,
why wouldn't, no, this is something that we were talking about in, the Jim Butcher, oh god, it's gone right in my head. The Dresden Files. If we had a completely new group of teens, solving a completely new, threat to life and existence, what would be the problem with that? Would it have to be a Buffy? Would it have to be a Sunnydale, existence kind of thing?
So, in terms of the comics, that's kind of how I feel about that. I think I would have felt better about this new run if they had done one of two things. Either gone back to the original storyline and time and told some untold stories. There is plenty of room for that. You know, we know that we probably didn't see on screen more than like a tenth of the various adventures that she got involved in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was constant, because she's going on patrol every night. She's, you know, there's so much. Add in the fact that you can retell those stories now with Dawn in the mix.
Yep.
Because she has become part of that reality, you know, retroactively, you know.
Yep.
And you could tell a bunch of fresh stories by doing that. I think the fans would like that. I do not know what the fan reception has been for the new run. Basically, I don't feel like that sort of a retelling is necessary.
Well, at this point, Buffy would just be the Secretary of Slayage, and she would be delegating all of his responsibilities. I mean, this would be a department. Right. And
yeah, and that story was pretty much told in the canon additional seasons. Mm-hmm. You know, how she went on to, and it did become a very large organization, international, you know, the stuff we heard mentioned in Angel, in the last season of Angel. And there was some very interesting stuff in it, you know, but it feels like that story might be told already. Mm-hmm. But I bet you could keep going with it. You know?
Well, even if you narrowed in on a potential and you, just followed her adventures around, or his, say, weirdly enough, that someone, was assigned female at birth and just, okay, well, I'm a dude, but I'm a slayer, so I'm gonna slay vampires, and yeah, their weirdness is, like the weirdness of the show and their environment and everything that's going on, and also the fact that they were kind of rejected by some of the slayers because, I mean, I feel like there's a way of doing it where it would be fresh and new, and it,
absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like you could probably, yeah.
Well, they have talked. They were talking about a new Buffyverse show. Every time I see it mentioned online, people incorrectly refer to it as a reboot. It was never going to be a reboot.
Yeah.
They were never planning on doing a story of Buffy. Mm-hmm. It was going to be a continued stories within that world. Yeah. And there was never got far enough to determine whether there would even be any of the old crew involved. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't be centering on Buffy. At that point, Sarah had clearly said she didn't really want to go back to the role.
Yeah.
It was going to focus on a new Slayer. The discussions that I heard, I believe that they were really wanting it to be a person of color, and that I believe actually the showrunner that was being tapped or being considered was a woman and a person of color, which I think makes perfect sense. But, so Joss, even before things got difficult for including him in projects, wasn't going to be the primary person running it, but he would have had a hand in it. So,
like production team or like, someone that ran things by or something. But I mean, I'm never going to deny the man's a fantastic storyteller. I wish him well, I wish everyone well, and I wish, oh my God.
But, I've seen multiple interviews with people who wrote for the show saying more or less the same thing. They're like, yeah, you know, people, you know, fans are aware of which episodes I wrote, and people come up to me at conventions, and they are like, oh, I love this episode you wrote. This line was great. Yeah, that was one of Joss's. You know, because he you know, that's the way shows work, and never one person.
Yeah. But yeah, talented. And also, I think if they were, I mean, we talked about the movie, we talked about the series, and we talked about the comic books. If there is an extension into this universe, goodness, can you imagine Andrew the Watcher? Can you imagine? I mean, the kinds of, like, tie-backs that you'd be able to. Goodness. Who would Allison Hannigan be now? Who would Eliza Dushku be now? I mean, it feels like, goodness, the appearance of David Boreanaz, because we have a lot of cool original series people who fans have strong connections and would be not every week, but my goodness.
I mean, just to give a sense of the way that the fandom would feel in a situation like that, I just want to put out there the line,
I'd like to test that theory.
We screamed. Literally, like, I think our neighbors in the apartment complex thought that someone had been hurt. You know, like, that was such a moment. There's a lot that can be mined for story, for nostalgia, and let's face it, for fan service.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Being a fan.
Absolutely. Please service me. You know?
Phrasing. And
remind me, we never really talked about all the little blink and you miss some cameos in this thing. Like,
no. Stephen Root.
Ben Affleck.
Best role I ever saw David Arquette in.
It was a lot of fun.
Oh, God, Hilary Swank.
I'm very happy to accept this honors. And I will try very hard to fulfill my needs as your next Miss America.
Hilary Swank is an Oscar winner in this film.
Seth Green.
Yeah, Seth Green was in this? Oh, I didn't realize.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. He was in it for literally 3 seconds.
Wow.
He's one of the vampires that is outside of the gym when Buffy first comes out. And for like a split second, you can see him with the others taunting her. And then you see the back of his head as she kicks him, at one point. But you can tell who he is by his hair.
Oh, God dang.
But,
well, he was in the series for much longer, so that's good.
Yes. And again, Ben Affleck is one of the basketball players on the opposing team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, blink and you'll miss him, but there's some really cool... I don't know who Lothos... I didn't recognize that actor, but...
Rutger Hauer.
I see Rutger Hauer was in True Blood. He was in Sin City, too. That's cool. He's in Dracula again. It set him on a path, I see.
I love Rutger Hauer. I actually owned one of his shirts for a long time. I visited a friend in California, and while being bored one day while she was at work, I went walking and found there was a little corner store that sold things that had been used in wardrobe departments and stuff and disposed of. And he had a shirt that had been used as, I don't think it was actually his, I think it was a stunt shirt. Because it was written on the back of the collar, stunt, I think. And it was from a movie that he'd been, I figured out the movie, but I don't remember what it was now. But I loved that shirt. It was well made, because movie companies can afford to buy well-made stuff. And I wore that thing till it fell apart. Like, I love that shirt so much. Simple white button-up shirt, but it just had nice design elements to it and was really well made.
So anyway, cool. Yeah, like you mentioned, Donald Sutherland, what he brings to a role, whether the writer likes it or not, and really, Christy Swanson did. I think if you're going to be a title character, I thought that she really owned that role and just made it her own. And I thought stepped into it by the end. I felt she built a really strong base on which to build a series. And once Joss had complete control over who the vampires were, what they could do, and what Buffy could do, that was a world. When a show has done this much, I think, to build self-esteem for people who just speak to people where they are and say, no, you're important and and your experiences are important. That story got told in that show, and the loneliness and the isolation that they were able to address and bring forth. I mean, just talk about and to let people know, hey, what you're going through, you're not alone, and that
and that you have value, you have meaning, you have a place, and you have a voice. And
not every show.
It's all it's even shows that intended to portray strong female characters or outsiders who, in a good light, rarely had this kind of impact.
Yeah.
And I think, I honestly think it can be summed up. The impact that it had, the reason that it resonated so much. Now, to preface this, I'm speaking for women, and I'm probably am not the person to be doing that, but if you'll allow me, it's based on women I have talked to. I think the line that I think really sums up why it was so impactful and why it resonated. There was a version of this a couple times in the series, but in the movie, even as far back as there, in the very end, Ike and Buffy are dancing after everything is done. No music, but they're dancing together. And he says, "Buffy, you're not like other girls." And she says, "Yes, I am." And that's really the thing. This person who is the chosen one, who is a superhero, who we see regularly kicking butt, is still just a girl.
Yeah.
In the show, it was the 100th episode opens with her, the last episode of season 5, opens with her hearing somebody in the alley being attacked and goes out and drives away, or kills a vampire. And the male victim is standing there, mouth agape, and just says, but you're just a girl. And she says, "That's what I keep saying."
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's strong writing, and they did everything they could. That production team, and led by Joss, did what they could to forward that message into the, and I felt like for years my sister was telling me that I needed to watch this series, and I never did. She lent me her box set, and I said, I honestly do need to be watching this series. And so whatever Joss was upset about or had displeased him about the production that made him do a TV series, it was good to have access to that, and I feel like they took it and ran. I mean, the university was able to create, and the WB was happy to have like this many viewers watching something this well written, and so it had its 5 years, and then it had 2 more on UPN, and it was just good to have the access that I had. And if this was the beginning for that, I think they laid in some very good story markers for that. Mark, I want to thank you so much for helping me just kind of talk a little bit about this. You've been a fan forever, and I've been a fan not as long, but actually, you got to watch this in the theater, so it was really cool to get your take on it and get some time together. Thanks, Mark.
Anytime.
Thank you, Mark. Marc Bailey, everyone. Indeed, the movie was fun and nails in that second thing I mentioned way back there now. Something that's been obvious to me, at least for quite some time. The appearance of this FX presentation in my collection is as good a time as any to announce a 4th mystical center to my media collection, Joss Whedon Productions. Now, hang on. Everything we just talked about, and everything I said at the 1630 mark in episode 74, The Psychic is Always Right, back in the spring of 2021, stands. I've heard nothing new since. I'm unaware of a public statement for Joss Whedon even acknowledging antipathy, let alone apologizing for on-set behavior. The asterisk is still present at the fan blog Whedon-esque Twitter account, activists of this posting. This does not change the presence of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer box set, all 5 seasons of Angel, season 2 signed by actor Julie Benz, the Firefly box set, the Serenity movie on my shelf, as well as Dr. Horrible sing-along blogger, Joss-adjacent Tim Minear creations like Point Pleasant and Wonder Falls. I've highlighted such creations as Dollhouse as they've turned up in my archive. I've streamed and celebrated Whedon's production of Much Ado About Nothing. Others are way more invested in his contributions to X-Men, DC, and Marvel properties than I am, but credit him this far, the man can tell a story. And these connections are at least somewhat by design. As I've spoken about elsewhere, I'm much more likely to watch a show in the first place, or give it more of a chance before I stop watching it, if a Buffyverse actor is in it. What alias I have in my collection is chiefly post the 5th season presence of Amy Acker from Angel. I've watched and archived many seasons of Bones on the strength of David Boreanaz being in it, and the crazy ones. Goodness, there was no chance in hell I wasn't watching a David E. Kelly production starring Robin Williams, but casting Sarah Michelle Gellar as his daughter in no way hurt. Even relatively minor cast presence like Angel's Christian Kane's solidly warm paterfamilias in Close to Home held my attention over multiple seasons, though absolutely I was far more enthusiastic about his work in Leverage. Michelle Trachtenberg of Buffy and NBC's Mercy was at least as much a draw as Kate Mulgrew of Voyager fame. I didn't watch much of it, but Alison Hannigan is probably the only reason I'm even aware of How I Met Your Mother, and then castmate Neil Patrick Harris as Dr. Horrible was first rate. And it doesn't even expand the universe all that much, though it makes so much sense. Donald Sutherland was a step removed from mystical centrality through appearing with 6 Feet Under's Peter Krause and Dirty Sexy Money. Now he's just there, adding a closer connection to Commander-in-Chief, say, alongside Dollhouse alum Harry Lennox and the entire Hunger Games franchise. Evan Peters was already there through his involvement in Ryan Murphy Productions, so his appearance in X-Men is just bonus, and Simon Helbig's low-key contributions to Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog mirror his presence at Studio 60, but he makes his moistness felt. Other connections come into sharper focus. Bradley Whitford's involvement in anything brings it to within a step of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip and Joss Whedon production Cabin in the Woods. Buffyverse Anthony Stewart Head's appearance brings Doctor Who much closer to mystical centrality than David Tennant appearing with Allison Janney in a new Scrooged McDuck especially given she was already a step removed from Studio 60 via everyone on the West Wing. So now everyone involved in Doctor Who is no further than one step removed from the Whedonverse, where they were anyway, with Mark A. Shepard as Firefly's Badger appearing in a Matt Smith episode once. Speaking of, Firefly's Marina Bakar and Alan Tudyk forged direct ties to the 2009 V reboot, and Buffy's Nicholas Brendon tightens the connection for the short-lived Kitchen Confidential. Beyond that, it just makes sense. Whatever his flaws, Joss Whedon tapped incredibly talented people to help him tell good stories well, expanding and deepening the connections between actors and shows I clearly love enough to want to hold on to. Adding the Jossverse is more reinforcement than anything else, but it certainly gives me more to look at as this project continues, and with the appearance of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie in my archive, this feels like a fantastic time to acknowledge it. Now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. And very briefly, since this has come up a couple of times already, but as I was putting my notes together for this set, I learned the sad news of Donald Sutherland's passing. Others have said more and better, but for my part, I wanted to celebrate his appearance in the Buffy movie and highlight his appearances throughout my collection, including this very set, actually, where he had taken on the role of the Craven House speaker Nathan Templeton opposite Gina Davis's newly ascended President Mackenzie Allen in the pilot episode of Commander-in-Chief. Other appearances I know have got him in that role as Coriolanus Snow, President of Panem in the Hunger Games franchise. Scrolling all the way back, I possibly archived his appearance in an episode of The Avengers from 1967. See, he took on a role in Agatha Christie's Ordeal by Innocence in the 1980s. I'll have to run that to Earth sometime. I know I saw JFK at some point, probably the Simpsons episode he was in. Obviously, we just went into some detail about the Buffy movie. Possibly I saw him in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. Certainly I saw him in the run of Dirty Sexy Money. I watched Horrible Bosses. I do not remember one thing about it. Sure, I saw MASH, but to me, Alan Alda is Hawkeye. Donald Sutherland seems more the template around which they built the look for Hunter S. Thompson as Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Nothing to do with that film, of course, but yeah, Donald Sutherland has figured it out. I mostly caught the latter half of his filmography. He was a great voice for a serious character, could do gravitas with the best of them and be hilarious in the next breath almost. And despite being a diva in the Buffy movie, an actor who, according to Josh, shall remain hated, Mark picked up and developed a thread-eyed trace somewhat before we started recording. Mark?
Oh, I was just going to say, harkening back to something that you had mentioned, that if production hadn't gone so badly, if we hadn't had a frankly inept director, and that's a hill I'm going to die on. She was terrible. Mm-hmm. If Rutger Hauer hadn't been, much as I love him, a little miscast for this, and if Donald Sutherland hadn't a jerk and rewritten the scenes. And if it all just hadn't gone so badly, Joss may have never felt the need to keep it moving and do something else with the property. He may have never been offered the chance by WB to do that. He might have never gone into TV because he had wanted to do movies. Mm-hmm. We might never have had Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We might never have had Angel or Firefly. Yeah. And you and I might never have met.
I really am very happy that Donald Sutherland was such a diva.
I know, right?
I wouldn't necessarily, because you got me into podcasting. So, I mean, it was, Grailwolf's Geek Life made me think, oh yeah, I have a column every week. I could probably, put something out there. And, I feel like, 7 years later on this, going through just, my media collection and having, I feel like this has given me a chance to like reconnect with people and reconnect with my media collection and, just like go through it and get to talk about stuff that I love. And, if we hadn't met, I probably wouldn't be doing this. And, I don't know. Maybe I'd have already retired to the south of France for all of the wonderful, all the wonderful experiences I might have had. Except that I was holed up in a room talking about it. But, honestly, I feel like this is maybe, although there are lots of indications that we are in Dumbest Timeline, and they are many, I am happy that we got to connect. So, absolutely, Mark, Thank you. So, indeed, thank you, Donald Sutherland, who may in part be responsible for now 7 years of VideoFuzzy and beyond. Resquiescat in Panem.
I associate many things with many things.
Cross connection. Adding the Whedonverse as a mystical center automatically pulls everyone in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, both the movie and the series, into mystical centralities. So, I suppose we've got another edit to make. I so recently revised the naming convention. Currently my Studio Murphy Under challenge for the Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Ryan Murphy Productions, and 6 Feet Under. I space needing to do this. How are we going to fit Joss in here? Studio Murphy Under challenge, Joss Whedon, Buffyverse, Studio Buffy 6 Murphs Under, that's a lot. Studio 6 Feet Murphy-Murph? No, I think this does it. Yep, my Joss Under Murph Studio Challenge. Everyone's represented, there's a good balance, though I'm gonna have to rethink this if it ever expands again. So just by existing, Buffy the Vampire Slayer shows up mystical centrality for my media collection. Tracking cross-connections for this set, I found Firefly's Alan Tudyk and Dr. Horrible's Simon Helbig in an episode of Arrested Development. Other Arrested Development episodes in this set featured Zach Braff from Scrubs, Judy Greer from Archer, Mad Love and Love Monkey, and Dick Van Patten, David Tell, and Jeff Garland. I ran into Katerina Scorzoni from Grey's Anatomy and Missing again, this time in a mentioned up their 2009 sci-fi miniseries reimagination of Wonderland called Alice. Very strange. Lots of top names in that trippy thing, though, including Kathy Bates, Tim Curry, Cole Meany, Henry Dean Stanton, and long-acknowledged golden thread in this production, Matt Freuer. Jay Carnes of The Shield showed up in an episode of Numbers, and in animation, Ray Romano showed up in an episode of The Simpsons, and by way of learning something new, I encountered Stephanie Beatrice in an episode of The Closer. More usually on my screen is the voice of the outrageously well-coiffed Chloe Barbish on Bob's Burgers. Awesome. Then, quick shout-out and Under the Wire Pride Month congratulations to DJ Qualls on a recent announcement he's affianced to Supernatural castmate Ty Olson. Qualls appeared in the pilot episode of Criminal Minds, turned up on disc 1624 in the set of cataloging, alongside Mandy Patinkin as Jason Gideon and Antonio Winston Churchill, quote, "The farther backward you can look, the farther forward you will see." Winston Churchill. Chills. Diving into my classic collection. In my classic VHS to DVD collection, which for this set includes discs 1601 to 1625, as I mentioned up there, this was a significant slug of episodes. I was gonna go in order, but I gotta start. There are significant turning point episodes in Rescue Me, a seriously overwritten, outrageously dramatic, God, I understand the loss of 9/11, but tumultuous home life, banging your late cousin's wife on the side, fighting fires and crew constantly busting each other's balls, or fondling them like Sean and Proby at the top of this particular episode, and cancer, infidelity, hallucinations. I mean, no wonder he drinks, but disc 1609, I find Tommy fixing his car in a second season episode. All kinds of emotional stuff is going on in this episode. A bombastic will reading. Tommy's sister shows up, beat the absolute crap out of Sheila. I mentioned Sean and Proby checking each other for ball cancer in the damn Ladder 62 locker room. And yes, Diane Farr's Laura walks in on them doing this. But the last quarter of the show, Tommy is out front fixing his car, and his young son Connor's going to show him something. He goes in the house to get his bike. Tommy doesn't see where he's gone. After a moment, there's a car screeches to a halt down the block. Driver gets out, stumbles, glares at Tommy, gets back in and drives off. Tommy's a little weirded out and asks his wife, Janet, if Connor's still in the house. Janet said, no, he was up front with you. Tommy's got a bad feeling, runs to where the car was, finds Connor's body broken, bleeding in the street. Incredibly well-presented montage that Gavin's getting their son to the emergency room. The rescue attempt and realization that they've lost their son is some of the best storytelling in a series that is incredibly good at this. Part of what makes it so effective is the in IMDb says Ray LaMontaigne's All the Wild Horses under emotionally effective photography. The reason this show can have heartbreaking emotional moments like this is that the writing is this good. The acting, the storytelling is this good. These characters, you know these characters, you met them. They're in your family. They're awful. They're hilarious. They are completely out of hand. And no one cares as much for you as family when stuff like this happens. And be fair, the show is centered around a group of high-octane personalities who the core of their lives is they run in fires, help people in danger to rescue. It's an incredible show, earned scenes like this, but being so consistently and improbably good, I enjoyed reconnecting with this power. I mentioned this is a significant set of discs I'm going to need to spend a lot more time with down the road one day. But yeah, disc 1601, I find this 40-year retrospective of Hair. This show is one of those shows that's just so important to me. I encountered in my early 20s a truly idealistic moment in my life. Right alongside, I also have on VHS copy of Jesus Christ Superstar, and themes and parallels flow freely. Most recently, Ralph and I took in a Broadway and Bismarck production of Hair, probably about 10 years ago now. Really, and Theatricals troupe did a truly outstanding job. My only access to the show before than the movies, the stage version was completely fresh and new to me. Powerful performances, and of course the sacrifice of one life to save others is compelling, whatever the context, but the storyline carries really well. Having this documentary reference in my collection is an incredible resource. I was so happy to find it. Finding Comedy Central's uncensored presentation of Kevin Smith's Clerks is just going to be important for me as well, as soon as I can take the time to just kick back and enjoy my media collection one day. I don't think I've seen Clerks since I made this recording, probably 15 years ago now. I've seen most of the Jay and Silent Bob projects since then. Loved Dogma. I will almost certainly kick back one weekend and watch all of them. I don't know why Dave Made a Maze is insisting I include it in that lineup, but it just friggin' is. And I very much know why Cabin in the Woods is, but I'm probably gonna ignore that demand. Other standouts in this clearly significant set I found in disc 1624, the pilot episode of Criminal Minds, titled Extreme Aggressor. Without pulling it up and watching, I can't tell you much about it, but I did see them establishing a behavioral analysis unit, establishing some characters and histories, and you could tell a lot of thought had gone into who these people were going to be and what they were going to mean to each other. The first season, certainly this episode, seemed interested in psychology and profiling as a science rather than spotlighting some weirdo of the week that sell nervous people home security systems through CBS fascination with crime porn. Oh, and discs full of South Park, Arrested Development, The Simpsons, and 24. I found this weird scrap of something called Bliss from the Oxygen Network series explored kink and basic cable erotica that, well, I'm sure someone enjoyed it, but didn't hold my attention. Sorry. On disc 1613, I found a two-part miniseries reimagination of Alice in Wonderland on Sci-Fi called Alice, starring Katerina Scorsone, Kathy Bates, and Tim Curry. I've got, Sean Puffy Combs hosting the 20 on 5 MTV Video Music Awards. I'll probably gloss over that one a bit, although I do have quite a lot of great music showing up in this set, including Jessica Simpson teaming up with Willie Nelson to reinterpret Nancy Sinatra's These Boots Are Made for Walking for the Dukes of Hazzard movie, plus Fall Out Boy, Gorillaz, Sheryl Crow, System of a Down, White Stripes, Jay-Z, Thelma Houston, Eminem, both Ass Like That and The Making of for Ass Like That, featuring the Crank Yankers puppets, and finally, on disc 1604, 1605, and 1607, I have the feature-length theatrical submission for Green Day's war epic, Wake Me Up When This Video Ends. Billy, my God, it's a music video. Kemper?
Hi, I'm Kemper Donovan, host of All About Agatha, and you are listening to VideoFuzzy. Enjoy.
Thank you, Kemper. For their part, All About Agatha's Instagram celebrated the life of Donald Sutherland with a movie poster highlighting his involvement in the 1984 production of Agatha Christie's Ordeal by Innocence. Very nice. Checking out my current collection. As for my current direct-to-digital collection, I'll put it like this. Plans do not always pan out. I was planning to celebrate my 7th year of doing this with a great big send-off for Pat Sajak. Yes, I am aware of how nowhere on his radar this would be, and absolutely I'm aware of his personal politics. He did very obliquely reference them in his farewell comments on the show. I'd argue that how he votes was largely kept off the screen, and while I sometimes suspected I knew some of the contestants' personal politics, the game remained, as he asserted, a safe place where people were just solving word puzzles together and having fun. Part of the reason I felt like making this feature was, well, I was going to need something thrown together pretty damn quick if I was going to complete this episode this month, and this would frankly have been an easy one to do. It's been on my screen since for my entire life, I think. Everyone more or less knows the show, and whatever you think of Pat, co-host Vanna White is pretty awesome. And just about as long as we've lived together, Ralph and I have enjoyed this show, enjoyed solving the puzzles together. He'd get one line, I'd get the next, or he'd have it solved while I was still chewing it over in my head. There have been times when I could logic it out by myself, but in any case, well over 90% of the time ahead of the contestants. I reasoned that unless we were in a couples competition, we'd be missing each other while trying to solve, particularly not being able to bounce ideas off of each other in real time, or else to do so within earshot of everyone else. So ahead of Pat's final week, I got a commemorative edition of the Wheel of Fortune magazine, and apart from the clips and highlights they showed, the Wheel of Fortune live experience I highlighted last episode, I thought we'd be seeing a whole bunch of that kind of stuff the final week. And they did include skits from past seasons where Vanna peeked in on Pat rehearsing, or an April Fool's edition where he wore a bald cap and Vanna pulled his wig off. They included a clip of his daughter interviewing him, most of which we had to click to the Wheel of Fortune website if we wanted to see it. And the final episode, they showed Pat's very first episode where, my God, has anyone ever looked that young? Vanna shared beautiful and touching send-off comments and of his penultimate episode as host, and he, as I mentioned, spoke for some 5 minutes or so, bidding us farewell. Some comments from Jim at the top of the show wishing him well and acknowledging the generational impact the show has had and the joy he took in being part of that. But it was, as the show has always been, focused mainly on the game, where we seen contestants sometimes preternaturally insightful, figuring out thoughtfulness from having guessed one letter, or breathtakingly dim, where all 3 contestants take multiple turns figuring out a final puzzle. Seriously, we've seen people we weren't sure how they found their way into the studio. Like, okay, you see that space over there where you're going along and the wall just suddenly looks kind of different? Head that way. If you're wondering who, George Takei generally highlights flaps of this nature from his Facebook account. Now, to be fair, most everyone was ordinary people who probably this was their biggest audience doing anything. Nerves are real, the lights, the pressure, it's all a thing. Pat would have fun with them, but generally, at least in his on-screen persona, he was kind, good-natured. Apart from their winnings, the very final group of contestants got a gift of $5,000 each, which is a very nice parting send-off, and oh right, they shared clips of past contestants who'd won trips and vacations, thanking the show, wishing Pat well in his retirement. And the week before Pat's final week with the show, they brought back fan favorites who shared and reminisced with clips of past appearances. There were some strong finishes, even confetti for one contestant between winnings in the bonus round, claiming over $100,000 one night, but mostly it was just fun interspersed with clips and nostalgia, as Pat pointed out some instant nostalgia this summer were reruns ahead of the new season, welcoming, as BoJack Horseman's Holly Woo would have it, a Ryan Seacrest type for his replacement. But yeah, while I determined this was a bad choice to lead with, it felt like a strong inclusion to highlight the close of a chapter and an ongoing source of joy for us, playing at home and delighting in the joy of solving little puzzles. Farewell, Mr. Sajak, and better thoughts attend. I wanted to give a quick shout-out to fellow podcaster Terry Gio, who's living such an exciting life, working with Paul T. Davies and staging his exciting production, Blink, a one-man gay rom-com, which, as of this posting, is hosted on his YouTube channel, Dramatic Much, that link is in my show notes. The show, as presented here, is absolutely fantastic. We're introduced to the main character, Jake. We learn about him and his nutty friend group, how he met the love of his life, and the crazy, pointless little details that make memorable moments memorable. We learn through the progression of their very passionate romance about his friend, then lover, then husband, Akita, and the persecution of LGBTQ plus persons in nations around the world, some including abuse, torture, and the death penalty. Gio points out that it's very easy to forget nations where gays have secured full equality that not everyone has. The heavier moments are far outshone by the lighter, day-to-day, beautiful story he tells of their love and parallels the author draws from his own life. Absolutely fantastic show. And you can check out his regular podcast, Refracted World with Terry Gio. His first season is in the feed, and his second season is meant to be starting out here pretty soon. Check it out. From here, it'll get a bit spoilery for the Doctor Who Season 1 finale, so whoever I'm bidding farewell, thanks for joining me and all the best. Still with me? Fantastic! Another in the spirit of Blink and you missed it, Doctor Who's 20-minute season wrapped recently with a 2-part season finale organized around a mystery woman on the verge of, you've absolutely encountered this before, releasing new software around the world for free. Susan Triad, S-Triad, an anagram of TARDIS, yes, but in fact the significant reveal is in fact built from her first name, Susan Triad Technologies. Or, in fact, Sutek, the big bad from number 4 Tom Baker's adventure, The Pyramids of Mars, Osiris, God of Death. Adventure starts with number 15. I've been informed he is absolutely 15. And Ruby, Shooty Got One, Millie Gibson, joyously greeting everyone at UNIT. Kate, Mel, Rose, Mini-Me, Grace Jones, Jarvis, some hot randos, and Doc demands to know who this older mystery woman is. He seems to be following him around his various adventures. As he describes her, they get very quiet. Doctor, that's Susan Triad, who it seems is as much a construct as her name, because apart from being a tech genius unleashing new comm tech for free out into the world, she has also been a nanny bot, a triage device, a mother figure, a maid, and she's experienced all these realities as dreams. But the worlds the Doc has landed on all had their own ongoing stories exterior to his visit, cosplaying aliens, a hyper-connected hive-topia being consumed by AI slugs, war-ravaged planets, or some alt version of Earth with no musicality. No time to explore this further because 21 years ago Ruby was left at a church, so Doc has UNIT fire up the time window he knows they have. Pulling from a well-worn VHS tape of CCT from the era, the team can't quite make out Ruby's mom, but they can see the TARDIS that landed way back when, and there's a shadow on it, and a shadow on the TARDIS that Doc landed in UNIT, and the logo for Susan Triad Technologies jumbles about a bit on the screen. It seems the big bad is revealed as being Sutek. The God of Death is glommed onto the TARDIS wherever they go. He's leaving his trace, which envelops the living and turns them into dust. He's inescapable. Ever since the Doctor encountered him back in the 1970s, he's essentially been traveling like a layer of paint on the outside of the TARDIS, holding on for dear life like Captain Jack that one time. Doc has piggybacked him to the beginnings and the ends of the universe, all of time and space. So now that Sutek's tech is unlocked, the God of Death is now free to destroy all reality. Which reminds me a little bit of The Flux, to be honest. Actually, kind of looks like it. And that wasn't Sutekh. That was some Gallifreyan lab coat positioned between universes. Kind of reminds me of Weeping Angels a little, too. The dust. As for glomming onto the TARDIS, that's a wild ride indeed. This old Type 40 time machine, just off the top of my head, has in turn been a woman. In Season 6, the TARDIS was played by Sir Ann Jones. That must have been fun. In Season 3, John Simmons, Professor Yana, and then Harold Saxon, always the master, rejiggered the thing as a paradox machine. In the original run, Peter Davison as number 5 offloaded vast inner holdings, so it was barely an engine room in a closet anymore. And when Peter Capaldi was running around it once shrunk to the size of a loaf of bread. Kylie Minogue ran into it with a spaceship. John Barrowman dry-humped the thing through the vortex, by extension, Sutekh, and since Captain Jack is a fixed point in time and space, therefore immortal, that must have been truly annoying for a god of death. I feel like there's other realities Sutekh had to contend with, like when Matt Smith was trying to hold Amy Pond's pregnancy in limbo to protect Melody from the Church of the Silent to the papal mainframe. That was similar to the Schrödinger Are They or Aren't They adventure in Amy's Choice, where they were fighting zombie olds or freezing to death somewhere in the TARDIS. There's a crack in time and space somewhere, the other side of which it exploded, and then when it spat Jodie out in Season 11, vanished, then turned up, flickering on and off somewhere as the Ghost Monument, or the time David lost it for a few decades in Blink, or whatever the hell was happening with it and Matt on Chancellor, or when Ruby was frozen out of it for decades in Wales in an alternate timeline. It was a lot of time for Sutekh to hitch a ride, hatching his evil scheme while zipping back and forth through time and space to somehow engineer this Susan Triad thing as bait and unleash Grace Jones as a harbinger. Bringing death to death doesn't undo all the death any more than reversing the polarity makes a planet covered in Harold Saxon clones back into the original humans they started out as. Dragging Sutekh along through the vortex past everywhere he's already been doesn't... Oh, for Christ's sakes, I mean, yeah, when 15 claimed as a duplicate TARDIS and the giggle, did we get a second Sutekh as well? I mean, for people who pride themselves, they think of everything. There are cavernous, cratery gaps around this. And for all the mystery surrounding Ruby's mom, I was expecting more, frankly, and for all Mrs. Flood was being creepy, she sure switched off her death cult thrall like a frickin' switch. She got the last word, though. Wardrobe change, information she can't really have, and God knows who she thinks she's talking to straight out to the camera. It's weird choices. Anyway, so that was a wrap on Season 1. The bus is definitely on the road, and I love everything that's been done to mesh this season with the whole history of the Doctor and highlight his past connections. I like 15 for his compassion, his inventiveness, and his swagger. I do not much think of his adventures thus far, or there's more to say, feel free to escape the Mappityverse and rejoin us out here in consensus reality, or, something somewhat less ridiculous. The God of Death is a fine big bad for a universe of goblins, fairies, and formless ones, but hey, let's dig ourselves back out of this year's Pandorica. As for Season 2, let's have a couple dozen more episodes and some means of establishing who this Doctor is beyond health and safety, gin and tonic division. Cheers! And with that, absolutely time to get this in the feed. So many thanks. Thanks to my dear friend Marc Bailey for his time and trademark brilliant insights on the Buffyverse. Thank you to Kemper Donovan for the kind shout out and always fantastic podcast all about Agatha. And thank you all for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com, and for past episodes, add, follow, and subscribe to VideoFuzzy everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you get a chance, check out my VideoFuzzy the soundtrack entries as well. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites via email to tjaman1970@yahoo.com or through my VideoFuzzy pages on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing!
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find it together on VideoFuzzy.